Well, the Monstrous Secret has finally been unleashed, and a primeval horror from the icy depths has made landfall, a multi-headed nightmare desperate to feast on surface dwellers, and feast it shall. The Kharibdyss has arrived, and we'll begin our new hunt against the Bretonnians, who have also received some pretty substantial buffs in the new update. Now, this monster is designed as an anti-large monster killer and terror-causing platform, which is uniquely suited for because of its abyssal howl, the constant -8 leadership hacks that follows the little guy wherever he goes. It's an absolutely gorgeous and hideously ugly model all rolled into one neat, brutal package. Has 500 weapon strength, 25 bonus versus large, and poison, so it hits like a truck. Now, this video will be two different battles, first against Bretonnia, then against the Lizardmen, and we'll get to see that Kharibdyss and its Sorceress Master in all its glory. The build is pretty simple. Sea monsters operating on both flanks, Witch Elves and Sisters of Singing Doom in the rear, bolstered by Black Guard, frontline and Dread Spears and Blackguard Corsairs with Repeater Crossbow Dark Riders on the flank, and Slaanesha's Harvesters currently hiding in the rear, ready to spring their attack when the moment is right. Now for Bretonnia, there are some pretty substantial changes coming in this patch as well that buff them pretty significantly. Lewin got +10 armor, Paladins got +12 bonus versus large and the Guardian ability, so they'll passively grant physical resistance to Bretonnian lords, and be a lot more effective as monster hunters when they're gooning with their Bretonnian overlords. And all men-at-arms got the expendable attribute, meaning they will not cause knights or foot squires to take a leadership hit when they start chain routing, because why would knights ever care about peasants running for the hills anyway? Well, my opponent Jack has gone for a peasant-themed build here to try out the new stuff, and has forgone a lot of the heavy cav units in anticipation of the Kharibdyss, because they will butcher Bretonnian knights if you decide to take a straight-on melee engagement with them. But he does have the Beast Slayers of Bastogne in the center, and he still has Grail Knights and those Knights Errant Regiment over now with Frenzy. But the Blackguard Corsairs will come up right up the center, slam into these men-at-arms, and that should not be a difficult engagement, especially backed up by the Witch Elves. And that Abyssal Howl will be unleashed, and the Kharibdyss will start tearing into the flank of these men-at-arms, and almost instantly, that -8 leadership penalty and the terror it causes will start causing a rout out on that flank. Meanwhile, the Beast Slayers of Bastogne are holding out quite nicely against these Blackguard Corsairs, just in time for a Common of Cassandora to erupt from the sky, slam down into the middle of their ranks, and that will probably precipitate a rout for the Blackguard Corsairs in the center. Meanwhile, the Kharibdyss, with its 35% missile resistance, will be able to take some shots from those peasant bowmen, but only has 50 armor, has no regeneration, and is kind of slow, so can definitely be susceptible to mass archer fire, even though it does have that scaly skin. And on this flank, it is bad for the Bretonnians. Grail Knights have charged in, but pretty much everything else is routed. And then Abyssal Howl is so good against low leadership infantry. Men-at-Arms, Skaven, a lot of the Horde factions will basically just run instantly when that thing makes contact. So you've got to be very careful. Got to make sure you have something to protect your retreating units. Our Doomfire Warlocks and the powerful light cavalry of the Dark Elves can swoop in and make you pay pretty heavily. You see some Doomfire Warlocks have made it around the flank right now, going for that squishy stuff in the back lines. Meanwhile, Kharibdyss in the center of Grail Knights, and that is exactly where he loves to be. If he has infantry support and can chunk away at the high HP per model of the Grails or any kind of expensive cavalry, he will be having a wondrous feast, and that is certainly what's happening right now. Meanwhile, Slaanesha's Harvesters have made it in the back lines. They're blasting their cotton candy attacks into the middle of these peasant bowmen and the Blessed Field Trebuchet in the back, and they're going to run down all these low armor units. And this is why I love Doomfire Warlocks, especially the Regiment of Renown. They just give you so much utility, so much speed, so much mobility, that they can just basically make a lot of these routing units never come back to the fight, because they have the killing power to make sure that they don't. Meanwhile, the Grail Reliquary is buffing up the Beast Slayers of Bastogne. Lord of Heaven's Caster nearby, faced with that terrifying howl of the sea creature, and Sisters of Singing Doom and Doomfire Warlocks. The Edgelords of Nagaroth being super annoying in the back lines. Lewin and the Paladin can murder them, but they need time to do so, and Soulstealer is an ever-present threat as a charge about to hit home, send peasants flying like bowling pins. Only thing they're worth is entertainment as they're slaughtered, and the right flank of the Bretonnians has broken as the Sorceress leads her Beasts of War back towards the Lion-Hearted and the Sword of Crone, which is debuffing all those units in the engagement there. Has finished up now, and Lewin and Bakey, or Beaquist, or Bakis, or however the hell you say that. I mean, the Hippogriff is really strong. It's really powerful, but does not want to be fighting in the middle of Blackguard with a Kharibdyss nearby, so he'll want to disengage very quickly. Lore of Lifecaster here would be glorious for the Bretonnians. They would really love some Earthbloods on top of that fight. But they're still in this one. Peasants are still alive, although some of them are being ridden down by those Doomfire Warlocks. More of them coming back from that flank, but the Kharibdyss can drop that -8 leadership penalty. And basically every time he enters combat, it's just peasants running instantly. Tail thwap, absolutely slaughtering a bunch of them. That'll be the men-at-arms gone, and I'm not sure they'll be coming back to the fight. Dread Spear surrounding King Lewin, and this is where a Kharibdyss can really shine, when it has that infantry support, when it can drop that debuff on nearby enemy infantry, and also hit a large target. Remember, 500 weapon strength, 350 of that is AP damage, so it will go through Bretonnian Lords, it will go through high armor stuff for sure. Really powerful weapon strength, and they seem to perform pretty well against both infantry, at least low-tier infantry, and certainly the big monsters in cavalry, where I've seen the Kharibdyss a couple times now, like that, kill 4, 5, 6 cavalry units in a single attack. Which is insanely good. Insanely good. And that will send the Knights Errant running, and Lewin will make his last stand, but with the Doomfire Warlocks and the Sisters of Singing Doom coming in from the rear, that should pretty much seal the deal. Now, I don't know that I recommend bringing 2 Kharibdyss in a single build. Maybe if you're expecting to see Dino Spam from Lizardmen or something like that, it could be really good. The issue that I think Kharibdyss are going to have is they don't have a lot of mobility. So, cavalry build, you could still definitely go cavalry heavy with Bretonnia, and in fact, against the Dark Elves, I would probably recommend it. Jack was going for a peasant build here just to test it out and see how it would work, but I really think that going heavy cav would be completely fine, because you don't have to commit your cavalry to those Kharibdyss. You can kind of run circles around them, and I think that will probably be the biggest issue. So while the leadership debuff is insanely good, if your opponent goes for a more cavalry-focused build and micros appropriately, they can kind of ignore them completely with their Grails and Questing Knights and just focus on other stuff. But it will be very interesting to see how the Dark Elf vs. Bretonnia meta develops after this patch, because there's no question, Bretonnia has more options now. Hippogriff Knights got buffed, Paladins got buffed, their Lords got buffed. They're definitely a better faction, and honestly, they weren't terrible before this patch either, so it'll be very interesting to see how that all shakes out. But we're into the second game now, and this is a very different style of battle, this time against the Lizardmen. I've again gone for 2 Kharibdyss because I wanted to increase my chances that at least one of them would perform well, and I think it could actually be a great centerpiece unit against Lizardmen to cause those chain routes and take on dinos, but bringing 2 is very expensive. And one of the biggest issues with that is that it makes it a lot harder to invest in cavalry that is fast enough to catch all those obnoxious little skinks, and also have enough killing power on the main line to carve through Saurus and Temple Guard. And this is honestly why I hate playing against the Lizardmen, because cold-blooded healing on single-entity dinos with 105 move speed, like Krotgar and Grimlock, is very annoying, although he doesn't really abuse that this game. But there are Chameleon Skinks as well. There are 4 of them operating out on the flanks, and normally I'd bring a few Dark Riders or Doomfire Warlocks to run them down, but the double Kharibdyss build makes it a lot harder to afford that. So we need to close into melee ASAP with these Temple Guard and Saurus, and just shut them down as our Dread Spears move out on the flanks to kind of shield and zone out those Chameleon Skinks, and I bring back my Slaneshi Harvesters to hopefully run them down. But Krotgar into the flank of my Bleak Swords, and my Blades of the Blood Queen will charge right up the center into the middle of the Saurus, and they should do very well there. We're going to debuff Krotgar, expecting him to take a melee engagement, although he'd be smart not to. And Kharibdyss taking 6 models down with a single attack there. That's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, that 500 weapon strength is so powerful, and the poison to debuff them, make them a lot slower. So those cold ones definitely got beat up from that single attack. Slaneshi Harvesters have already run down 1 of those Chameleon Skinks, but running down 4 is going to be a tall order because they're so spread out right now. And they have the mobility to just be annoying and kind of slow you down and make you focus on stuff for a while. But Temple Guard and Krotgar are into the fight now, as well as my Sorceress and the Kharibdyss, backed up by some Dread Spears. And we'll try to surround Krotgar and get some good attacks off. That was a Penumbral Pendulum in the back. A little bit wasted on loose formation Temple Guard or Saurus, though. Much better against tightly packed Skinks or something else like that. But I wanted to see how it would perform. I haven't tested it much against Lizardmen mainline and did not do very much for me there. But the Bleak Swords and Executioners should be able to do very well in the center. Meanwhile, Kharibdyss and Blackguard will overrun the Saurus position and hopefully roll the flank. Once we do that, we might be able to collapse in on the center, hopefully cause a chain rout, and then focus on Krotgar, because Krotgar is getting beat up right now in that fight. The Poison and the Blackguard nearby have made it very hard for him to disengage, but now that he has healing on top of him, will be a problem. We'll try to shut him down early, but we don't have a lot that can actually catch him. Only the Doomfire Warlocks, and they don't want to fight that for a long time, but Arnsiple's Black Horror into the middle of a bunch of Temple Guard. I love the look of that spell. It is so much fun to use, and I didn't actually notice it during the game. And it's going to go through and go into another engagement that I wasn't going for at all, and actually damage my Blades of the Blood Queen pretty substantially as well. So it didn't do a massive amount of damage to the Temple Guard, but it did hurt them. But it also hurt me too, and I need those Blades of the Blood Queen for as long as possible, because they're really my best option against those Temple Guard. But Seneshi Harvesters are doing exactly what they're supposed to do, running down all those skirmishers out on the flanks, doing very well for me. And the Black Guard should be able to do well against Saurus, so they'll maybe not kill them quite as fast as I would like to. Maybe one more Executioner would really help me punch through all these infantry. But the Ankylosaurus of the Praise the Sun variety soaking up damage from my Sorceress, who won't be able to easily punch through that armor unless she was on a Manticore or a Black Dragon. And my Black Guard and Sea Monster are chasing after Grimlock, trying to get their hands on him. Battle lines have completely shifted now as the Doomfire Warlocks stay on the prowl, never stopping, cannot keep them from moving. They really need to be on top of those Chameleon Skinks, and they need to stay away from those Cold Ones and the Carnosaur, because they will get munched up if they take a prolonged engagement with them. But I'm holding on to that Soul Stealer with the Doomfire Warlock, so I can hopefully get Krotgar and maybe another single entity inside that and steal back a whole lot of that HP. Kharibdyss performing very admirably against infantry, honestly. I've been very impressed with how they're able to deal with infantry. I don't know the differences between it and the Hydra. I haven't looked at the tables in the background or anything to see like how many attacks they get off or how many units they hit with each attack, but they seem to perform very well, especially with that leadership debuff, but honestly just in terms of their raw DPS. So they're definitely doing some good work against these Saurus right now, and they're really helping anchor those Blackguard who probably would have already run for the hills if not for that reinforcement. But now Kharibdyss and Krotgar get a debuff down on him, and we need to finish off the Saurus Old Blood, the last defender of Zodal, and we need to finish off Grimlock, or we're going to be in for a hell of a rough time. And the Kharibdyss routes goes down here, backed up by the Temple Guard. Grimlock and Krotgar were too much for him, and that is a big problem. And our Sorceress got a little bit out of position. I was actually going for a Melkos Mystifying Miasma on Krotgar to hopefully let my Kharibdyss escape. Wasn't enough, and that made her get out of position, surrounded by the Cold Ones. Kharibdyss coming in to help reinforce, and this is going to be the most important engagement of the battle. If we can rout the Cold Ones and rout Krotgar, who has so little health here, that did 500 damage to Krotgar with a single attack. I mean, if you're doubting the raw monster damage output Kharibdyss can put out against large units, don't. I mean, seriously, 500 damage on a single attack is insanely good. But again, he disengages, and again, he will have access to another cold-blooded healing, which will heal like 1,000 of his health. So annoying. It is so obnoxious. While our Seneshi Harvesters run down these Chameleon Skinks, and they will get their charge off, but the poison will prevent them from shutting down both units, and those Doomfire Warlocks are definitely on their last legs. Blackguard about to rout. Kharibdyss no longer supported very well. Solar Engine firing in, and things are looking bad for the Druchii and for the Dark Elves. Lizardmen should be in the ascendancy here. And yeah, with the balance bar shifting pretty heavily in their favor, we look at Krotgar's health. He went down to 1,500, now back up to like 2,500 again. Ugh. And yeah, that'll be pretty much the end of the battle. We'll try to make a last stand, but there isn't much for it. Mass rout incoming, and the Lizardmen will take it. So, while I do think the Kharibdyss is a good pick against Lizardmen, or certainly can be if you use it well, I don't recommend the double. I think that it makes it too elite focused. I mean, they're 1,800 gold. They're as much as a Hydra. So you don't get as much line coverage there. You don't get as much infantry that can punch through Saurus. And if I was playing that battle over again, and I knew going into it, like I was going to rock that double Kharibdyss build, and I knew that that would potentially be problematic because it meant that I wouldn't have enough Doomfire Warlocks and Dark Riders to run down Chameleon Skinks and all the Skink Skirmishers that I was expecting him to bring. He didn't bring any skink skirmishers, but he did bring 4 chameleon skinks. Having 2 more Doomfire Warlocks or 1 more and then maybe a Dark Rider or 2 would have been extremely beneficial. But he played very well, did some great skirmishing, and ended up beating those Kharibdyss. So, hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you next time. Any Pride, signing out for now.